When Ulysses, or Odysseus, lived with Calypso, he found himself outside of space and time. We know these from the ancient Greek epic poems, the tales of heroic endeavors. When lightning struck Odysseus' ship, Ulysses' ship, near the island of the sun, all the remaining sailors drowned, floating like black crows between the sea, and the only one who escaped was Ulysses, or Odysseus. Odysseus in Greek, Ulysses is a Latin word. He was grabbed by he grabbed himself by a mast plank of the ship, and the current immediately swept him in the opposite direction towards Harivdis, one of the monsters, where he found himself in a dire situation. He was saved almost by a miracle. He remained for another 9 days alone, exhausted, in the waves. The currents dragged him from here and there to the edge of the world. At the moment when the sea would have swallowed him, he washed up, sea-beaten, on the island of Calypso. An island at the edge of the world is not even on the borders of the territory of water. An infinite water separates it from gods and men. He is nowhere, so Ulysses lies exhausted and Calypso gathers him. He will remain there for an eternity, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it doesn't matter, since time no longer exists. He's outside of space, outside of time. All the days are similar to each other. He lives with Calypso in a constant intimacy, a permanent conversation full of love, without any contact with anyone, without anyone else, the two of them in absolute solitude. Within a year, where nothing happens, where nothing new happens, and there are no events, each day is identical to the previous day, Ulysses is outside of the world, outside of time, on the island of Calypso. She is all love and understanding towards Ulysses. In fact, it's from this point that Homer begins the narration of the adventures of Ulysses. For 10 years, the hero had been hiding on the island of Calypso. He lives with the nymph. He has reached the end of his journey, his odyssey. Everything begins here, and everything is played out here. Indeed, the goddess Athena, taking advantage of the fact that Poseidon, the god of the sea, who pursues Ulysses out of his resentment and hatred, has calmed down, intervenes. Poseidon has gone to visit the Ethiopians, and he does many times, to feast with these mythical, eternally young creatures who exude the scent of violets, know no decay, and do not even need to work, because every morning they find in a meadow animal and vegetable food all ready, cooked as in the Golden Age. They live at the two ends of the world, at the edge of the east and at the edge of the west. Poseidon visits them at the two ends of the world, eats and rejoices with them. The goddess Athena therefore takes advantage of these circumstances and explains to her father Zeus that he's the god of the Olympian gods, he's a top god, that the situation cannot go any longer, and that all the Greek heroes who were not killed in the Trojan land, the Trojan War, or who were not lost at sea on their return, have now returned to their homelands, have found their loved ones, their home, and their wives. The only one, Ulysses, the pious Ulysses, to whom she particularly is attached, is imprisoned on the island of Calypso. Faced with his daughter's insistence and with Poseidon's absence, Zeus makes his decision. He rolls the dice and decides a fate. Ulysses must return. Easy talk, but first Calypso must let him go. Hermes takes on this task, and he does not like the mission at all. He has never set foot in Calypso's house, which is understandable since it's a place of nowhere. It's far from the gods, far from people. To go, one must cross a vast expanse of salt water and sea water. Hermes wears the sandals. He's as fast as lightning, as thought, frowning and saying that he carries out his order out of obedience alone, and against his will, he arrives at the island of Calypso. He's amazed to discover this place of nowhere. The small islands look like a paradise in miniature. It has gardens, forests, springs, running waters, flowers, beautiful furnished caves, where Calypso sings, spins, weaves, and meets with Ulysses. Hermes has been left alone. He approaches Calypso. They have never seen each other, but they recognize each other. Well, my dear Hermes, how come you are from our place? You are not used to visiting us. Indeed, Hermes answered her, if it were up to me, I would not have come, but I am conveying the order of Zeus, he said. The decision has been made. You must let Ulysses go. Zeus believes that there is no reason why Ulysses alone, out of all the heroes of Troy, should not return home. Calypso replies, stop the nonsense now. I know very well why you want me to leave Ulysses, because you gods are pitiful creatures, worse than mortals. You are jealous. The idea that a goddess lives with a mortal, you cannot bear that. That is Calypso, the goddess, the nymph. The idea that for years I have been living quietly with this man, my fellow man, that bothers you. But since she has no choice, she adds, okay, agreed, I will send him away. Hermes returns to Olympus. What was Ulysses doing while Hermes was entering Calypso's cave? He had taken refuge all alone on a cape in front of the sea that was foaming furiously and was crying with all his soul. He had become a whole tear. All the liquid vitality he had inside him was flowing from his eyes, his skin. He could not stand it any more. What had happened to him? In his heart, he was nostalgic for his previous life. He was nostalgic for his home, Ithaca, and his wife, Penelope, the faithful Penelope. Calypso knew, of course, that Ulysses was still thinking about the longing, that he was the man of the longing, but she hoped that she would make him forget the longing, to no longer remember who he was before. In what way? Ulysses had reached the land of the dead. He had heard down there among the shadows Achilles say how terrible a thing death is, that we become something like ghosts without life and consciousness. Anonymous shadows, the worst future a man can imagine. Calypso, now that his journey is over, along with his suffering, will offer him the opportunity to become immortal, to remain forever young, to no longer fear death and old age. By giving him this double promise, she knows that what she's doing, indeed there is a story that she could not have known, the whole world knows it. Dawn, Eos, had fallen in love with a very beautiful young man, Tithonus. She stole him to live with him and asked Zeus, because she supposedly could not live without this boy, this young man, to grant him immortality, so that they would never be separated. Zeus have smiled ironically and said to her, ask for immortality, we agree. So Tithonus arrived at the place where Dawn resides, on Mount Olympus, the young man with the privilege of never dying, but in a short time he became worse than an old man, because at 150, 200 years old, he became like a shriveled insect who could neither speak nor move, and who ate nothing, a living shadow. The impossible forgetfulness? Calypso does not offer Ulysses anything like that. She offers him the opportunity to truly become a god, that is, immortal and forever young. The dramatic element, the essence of this story, lies in the dilemma that Ulysses faces. He saw what death means. He saw it when he went to the Cimmerians, to the gate of Tartarus. He saw it when he passed by the sirens, who were praising his glory lying on their island, filled with corpses all around. Calypso therefore offers him the abolition of death and eternal youth, but for this transformation to take place, he must pay a price. The price he must pay is that he must stay there, forget his homeland. In addition, if he stays with Calypso, he must hide, that is, cease to be himself, cease to be Ulysses, the hero of the journey. Ulysses is the hero of memory. He is ready to undergo all the trials, all the sufferings, in order to fulfill his destiny, where it's written that he will find himself at the limits of the world of man and will find the way, will want to return and find himself. So he must deny all this. Calypso does not offer him immortality as Ulysses. She offers him an anonymous immortality, and he is a Greek. Calypso proposes to Ulysses the following, that he become immortal, that he remain forever young, but that a dark cloud cover him, that no one speak of him, that no human being offer his name, and of course that no poet sing his glory. As Pindar says in one of his hymns, great feats should not remain hidden. That is exactly what she gave Calypso her name. For a feat to exist, a great poet must praise it with his poetry. So Ulysses tells Calypso that he prefers to go back. He no longer feels any desire, lust, or love for the curly-haired nymph with whom he has lived for 10 whole years. He still lies with her at night, but because she wants him to. He no longer wants to. His only desire is to find his mortal life again. He even desires death. His lust turns towards mortal life. He desires to fulfill his life. Calypso says to him, "You are so attached to Penelope. Do you prefer Penelope to me? Do you find her more beautiful?" "Not at all. What are you saying now?" Ulysses replies. "You are a goddess. You are more beautiful. You are great. You are wonderful. And you do not compare to Penelope. I know that. But Penelope is Penelope. She is my life. She's my wife. She's my place. She's my home." "Okay," says Calypso, "I understand." So what happened? Ulysses lives with Calypso during a year where nothing happens. Events do not exist. Each day is identical to the previous one. That is where it all begins, writes Jean-Pierre Renan. The Universe, the Gods, the People, by Jean-Pierre Renan Patakis. And as we know, after 20 years of being absent from his home in Ithaca and from his faithful wife Penelope, he does return home. The goddess Athena transforms him into an old beggar man, and he does come home, where the suitors are trying to force Penelope to marry one of them, and she has what is called, I guess, she's weaving a piece of fabric, and she undoes the weaving every day, and then the suitors find out that she's conning them. And she says, "Okay, I'll choose one of you, but you have to be able to take this huge bow that used to belong to my husband Ulysses and throw an arrow that goes through the hole of some axes. You have to get the arrow to go through the hole of the axes, all 12 axes." And the only one who was able to do that was the old beggar man, who was retransformed into himself and was revealed to be Ulysses himself. The moral of the story is, through all your journeys, wherever your life takes you, make the best of it. And the moral of the story says, victory favors the bold. Just persevere and keep at it, and you will be victorious. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.